And people that, I mean, not just people like myself that has mental illness problems, but everybody. I mean, it's a lot of stress and it was hard.
Hollywood's golden age. The phrase alone brings to mind a kind of impossible glamour, with larger-than-life stars living in a world that felt like it was painted in Technicolor. They were icons, titans of the silver screen, their legends carefully, built and fiercely protected by the powerful studio system. Two of the brightest stars in that universe were Tony Curtis and Kim Novak. He was the impossibly handsome matinee idol with a rebellious streak, the boy from the Bronx who became a Prince of Hollywood. She was the ethereal, mysterious blonde, the face of glamour in films like Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Their on-screen chemistry and off-screen magnetism basically defined an era. They were the absolute pinnacle of celebrity, the American. Dream made real, but what if that dream was just a carefully built facade? What if, behind the perfect smiles and press-approved romances, there was a darkness the studios worked 24/7 to hide? The real story of old Hollywood isn't just what you saw on the silver screen, it's also what unfolded in the shadows. A world filled with secrets, scandals, and truths that were too damaging to ever see the light of day. For decades, those secrets stayed buried. But the past has a way of not staying dead. 15 years after Tony Curtis's death, his legacy is at the center of a shocking claim that has spread like wildfire across the internet, a dark story whispered in forums and amplified in viral videos. It's an accusation involving his contemporary, the legendary Kim Novak, and a secret she supposedly held onto for over 60 years. The story alleges a terrifying night, a spiked drink, and a violation that has haunted her ever since. It's a story that, if it were true, would forever change how we see one of Hollywood's most beloved icons. But in our age of instant information and misinformation, where scandalous rumors can circle the globe in a heartbeat, you have to ask, what's the real story here? Tonight, we're digging into that dark secret and the even darker truth behind the rumor itself. To get why any story involving Tony Curtis and Kim Novak is such a big deal, you have to understand just how famous they were. In the 1950s, they weren't just actors. They were American royalty. They were living, breathing pieces of the Hollywood fantasy, and the world could not get enough. Tony Curtis was the ultimate self-made man, the kind of rags-to-riches story America loves. Born Bernard Schwartz in 1925, he was the son of Hungarian Jewish immigrants raised in the crushing poverty of the Bronx. His childhood wasn't like the movies. It was a series of traumas. His family was so poor that he and his brother Julius were briefly put in an orphanage. His mother had schizophrenia and was often abusive. The defining tragedy of his youth came when his brother Julius was killed by a truck, a loss that haunted Curtis for the rest of his life. This was the world he was desperate to escape, and his face was his ticket out. After serving in the U.S. Navy in World War II and witnessing Japan's surrender in Tokyo Bay, he used the GI Bill to study acting. A talent scout spotted him, and Bernard Schwartz was shipped off to Hollywood. The studio, Universal International, gave him a new name, Tony Curtis, and a whole new identity. With his dark hair, chiseled face, and bright blue eyes, he was an instant sensation. He was the handsome hero, the swashbuckling adventurer, the guy everyone wanted to be. Films like Houdini, where he starred with his then-wife, the equally famous Janet Leigh, cemented his status. Their marriage was a real-life fairy tale, Hollywood's golden couple. But his roles in the late 50s made him an icon. His Oscar-nominated performance in The Defiant Ones proved he had serious acting chops, and his comedic genius in Billy Wilder's masterpiece, Some Like It Hot, alongside Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe, made him immortal. He was charming, funny, and impossibly good-looking. He was everything people wanted in a movie star. At the exact same time, Kim Novak was making a name for herself in her own unique way. Born Marilyn Pauline Novak in Chicago, she was discovered by Columbia Pictures while touring as a model for a refrigerator company, Miss Deep Freeze. Columbia's ruthless boss, Harry Cohn, saw her as his answer to Marilyn Monroe and a potential replacement for his rebellious star, Rita Hayworth. Cohn wanted to rename her Kit Marlowe, but Novak actually fought him on it. She insisted on keeping her last name, a small but powerful act of defiance at a time when stars were treated like studio property. She agreed to Kim, and a star was born. Novak's appeal was different. She wasn't the bubbly blonde next door. There was a mystery to her, a cool, detached quality that audiences found hypnotic. She was marketed as the Lavender Girl, with the studio making sure she had a lavender car, lavender clothes, and lavender decor. It was all part of the machine, building an image of untouchable beauty. But underneath all that PR was a serious, sensitive actress. She gave incredible performances in films like Picnic and The Man with the Golden Arm. And then came 1958, the year she became a true legend. Alfred Hitchcock cast her in Vertigo opposite James Stewart. Her dual role as Madeline Elster and Judy Barton is a masterclass in acting. That same year, she starred in the charming romantic comedy Belle, Book and Candle. By the end of 1958, Kim Novak was arguably the biggest female movie star in the world. She was at the absolute peak of her fame and power. This was the world they lived in, a world of incredible fame, but also incredible pressure. Their lives were products to be packaged and sold. And it was right there, in that pressure cooker of fame in 1958, that the event at the heart of this whole modern-day rumor is supposed to have happened. Decades passed. The golden age of Hollywood faded. Tony Curtis passed away in 2010 at 85, leaving behind a legacy of over 100 films. Kim Novak had long since left the Hollywood spotlight for a quiet life in the Pacific Northwest, focusing on her art and her animals. Their time as Hollywood royalty felt like a distant memory, and then the story appeared. More than a decade after Curtis died, a shocking story started bubbling up online. It showed up in blog posts, social media threads, and eventually, slick YouTube videos with giant sensational headlines. The story was specific, detailed, and horrifying. It claimed that Kim Novak, then in her late 80s, had finally broken her silence in a bombshell interview with the very reputable Hollywood Reporter and its Awards Chatter podcast in March of 2021. According to this viral story, Novak described a party at Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh's home back in 1958. At the time, she was the biggest star on the planet. In this supposed interview, Novak allegedly recalled Curtis handing her a drink. She claimed she had only that one drink before her memory of the night went totally black. The next thing she supposedly remembered was waking up, confused and disoriented, in her own home, naked. She had no idea how she got there. Her car was just parked outside. She'd never had a blackout like that before, and she was left with a chilling, unshakable feeling. As one version of the story quotes her, "I think Tony Curtis did it." The story claims she never told a soul. Not her agent, not the police, not her friends. Why? Because this was 1950s Hollywood, a world run by powerful men, where a woman's career was fragile. The same studio system that built stars could destroy them in an instant. Women who spoke out against powerful men weren't just ignored, they were punished. Their careers would be over. So, according to the story, she buried the secret for over 60 years. Only in the new climate of the Novak Me Too era did she feel she could finally speak out. It's a devastating story. It paints a beloved icon as a predator and a powerful actress as a victim of a system built to protect abusers. The story is compelling, tragic, and it fits perfectly with our modern understanding of old Hollywood's dark side. It's been shared and viewed by hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. It has cast a long, dark shadow over Tony Curtis's memory. There's just one huge, glaring problem. It's not true. The story about Novak's accusation is a perfect example of how a modern rumor is born. It has all the right ingredients: famous names, a dark secret, and just enough detail to sound credible. The key to that credibility is citing a specific trusted source, The Hollywood Reporter, and its Awards Chatter podcast, supposedly from March 2021. That one detail makes it sound like a verified fact, not just gossip. So we went looking. We did a deep dive into The Hollywood Reporter's archives, every article, every interview from 2021 and the years around it. We searched the entire catalog of the Awards Chatter podcast. We checked other major industry outlets like Variety and Deadline, and news databases from the Associated Press and Reuters. If a star as big as Kim Novak had made an accusation this serious against an icon like Tony Curtis, it wouldn't just be a story. It would have been a global media firestorm. It would have been front-page news everywhere. The result of that search? Absolutely nothing. There is no record of any such interview. Kim Novak did not sit down with The Hollywood Reporter in March 2021 or any other time to make this claim. She never appeared on the Awards Chatter podcast to talk about Tony Curtis. The entire foundation of this viral story, the so-called bombshell interview, simply doesn't exist. It's a digital ghost. The story is a complete fabrication that's been passed around the internet so many times it started to look real. What's more, the rumor gets basic facts wrong. The story often incorrectly states that Curtis and Novak were married. They never were. Curtis's famous and difficult marriage during that time was to actress Janet Leigh. While they were both huge stars at the same time and even appeared in one film together much later, The Mirror cracked in 1980, their lives weren't nearly as intertwined as the rumor claims. This is the danger of the internet. A lie, if it's juicy enough, can travel around the world before the truth even gets a chance to wake up. This baseless story has been allowed to spread, tainting the legacies of two legends. It does a huge disservice to Tony Curtis, leveling a horrific, unproven accusation against him. And maybe even worse, it does a profound disservice to Kim Novak. It recasts her as a victim in a story that isn't even hers, completely overshadowing the very real battles she fought and won on her own terms. But the fact that this specific accusation is false doesn't mean the story is over. The reason this rumor was so easy to believe is that it felt like it could have been true for that era. The darkness was real, even if this particular story isn't. And when you look at Tony Curtis's life, you don't need to invent scandals. The truth of his life was far more complex, and in many ways more tragic than any fiction. To really understand Tony Curtis, you have to go back to the beginning, to Bernard Schwartz, the boy from the Bronx. His life wasn't a Hollywood story, it was a story of survival. The poverty was one thing, but it was the violence in his own home that shaped the man he became. His mother, Helen, was volatile and abusive. Curtis later spoke about her schizophrenia, describing how she would beat him and his brothers. In his autobiography, he wrote about the constant fear and instability. "You want everybody to love you to begin when you're a kid," he once said. "And if your mother doesn't love you or doesn't act like she loves you, where are you going to go?" For Curtis, the answer was the movies. The cinema was his escape. He was running from poverty, trauma, and the memory of his brother's death, and running towards acceptance, adoration, and a new identity. Hollywood gave him that. It washed away Bernard Schwartz and created Tony Curtis. But you can't outrun your own history. The demons of his childhood, that deep insecurity and desperate need for validation, stayed with him. He admitted to always, feeling like he was never good enough. His famous good looks were, as he put it, a passport out of a garbage can. This internal battle played out in his personal life, especially in his relationships. His first marriage to Janet Leigh in 1951 was a public fairy tale. They were young, beautiful, and seemed madly in love, even getting married against the studio's wishes. For a while, they were Hollywood's golden couple, But behind the scenes, the pressure of fame and Curtis's own insecurities wore them down. The marriage blew up in a massive scandal in 1962. Curtis had an affair with his 17-year-old German co-star, Christine Kaufman. The divorce from Lee, the mother of his daughters Kelly and Jamie Lee Curtis, was a PR nightmare that seriously hurt his career. It was a pattern that would repeat. Curtis was married 6 times. His life was a whirlwind of marriages, divorces, and affairs. He struggled with cocaine and alcohol addiction, which made his behavior even more erratic. He was a man constantly searching for something he could never find, whether it was the love he never got as a child or a sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to his fame. By his own admission, he was often a difficult and unfaithful husband. This was the real, documented darkness in his life. A man haunted by his past, battling addiction, and leaving a trail of broken relationships behind him. While the shocking accusation that brought you here turned out to be false, the real story of Tony Curtis is just as complex. His life was a battle between the traumatized boy he was and the glamorous star he became. What do you think shapes a person more, their difficult past or the pressures of fame? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Just as the rumor misrepresents Tony Curtis, it completely erases the real struggles and incredible triumphs of Kim Novak's career. Painting her as a silent victim in a made-up story ignores the strength she showed, fighting a system that was truly stacked against women. Her biggest demon wasn't one man at a party. It was the entire patriarchal studio system, personified by the head of Columbia Pictures, Harry Cohn. Cohn was a notoriously vulgar and tyrannical boss who ruled his studio like a king. He saw Novak as his personal creation, and therefore his property. He controlled everything about her, from her weight and her clothes to who she was allowed to date. When Novak, the biggest star he had, fell in love with Sammy Davis Jr., a black entertainer, Cohn flew into a racist fury. In a segregated America, a public interracial romance was unthinkable to a man like Cohn. He reportedly summoned Novak to his office and forbid her from seeing Davis, even making threats against Davis's career and physical safety. Under that intense pressure, the relationship ended. This wasn't some hidden secret. It was a brutal public example of the studio's power and the systemic racism of the time. This was the real abuse of power Kim Novak endured. She also fought back. She resisted the studio's attempts to completely control her image and acting choices, but the constant pressure, the feeling of being a product instead of a person, eventually became too much. In the mid-1960s, when she was still a major star who could have been making huge money, Kim Novak did the unthinkable. She walked away. She left Hollywood for the rugged coast of Big Sur and later moved to Oregon. She traded sound stages for stables and red carpets for open fields. She wanted an authentic life where she could paint and raise her horses, far away from the press and the suffocating grip of the studios. This wasn't the action of a passive victim. It was a radical act of self-preservation. She chose her own well-being over fame, her freedom over a paycheck. She took control of her own story in the most powerful way possible. By focusing on a fictional assault, the viral rumor erases this incredible story of strength. It ignores the real monsters she faced: Harry Cohn's tyranny, the era's racism, the dehumanizing studio system, and the courage she showed by walking away from it all. So, if the story about Tony Curtis and Kim Novak is so clearly false, why did it spread so widely, and why was it so easy for people to believe? The answer isn't in the details of the story itself, but in the world we live in now. We're living in the wake of the Not or Me Too movement, which has forced a long overdue reckoning with the history of abuse in Hollywood. For decades, stories of powerful men abusing their positions were an open secret, whispered about but rarely brought into the light. Me Too shattered that silence. The movement has given us a new lens to look at the past, including Hollywood's so-called golden age. We now understand that the glamour often hid a culture of exploitation. The casting couch wasn't a myth. Powerful studio heads, directors, and male stars often operated without consequences. Women were expected to put up with harassment, and those who didn't were often blacklisted. The system was designed to protect powerful men and silence everyone else. Judy Garland was forced to take diet pills by the studio, Jean Tierney was subjected to unwanted advances, and countless other women faced a culture where they were treated as perks of the job. The fake story about Curtis and Novak fits this pattern perfectly. It feels true because, in a general sense, it reflects a truth about that time. The idea of a male star acting horribly and a female star being too scared to speak up is, sadly, completely plausible for that era. The rumor, while factually wrong, speaks to a larger, legitimate historical reality. It got popular not because of evidence, but because it confirmed something we already know to be true. The golden age of Hollywood had a dark, predatory side that was hidden for far too long. The rumor is a symptom of our collective effort to uncover those truths, even if it sometimes leads us to mistake fiction for fact. It's a powerful reminder to always question what you read, even when it confirms what you suspect. So where does this leave Tony Curtis's legacy? Without the weight of a false accusation, we're left with something far more complicated and human. His life was full of contradictions. He was the traumatized kid who became a beloved movie star. He was a gifted actor with incredible comedic timing and surprising dramatic talent. He created characters that brought joy to millions and became a part of our culture. His performance in Some Like It Hot is, no exaggeration, one of the greatest in comedy history. At the same time, he was a deeply flawed person. He was the product of a brutal childhood that left him with lifelong scars. He battled addictions that brought out his worst impulses. By his own account, he was a serial cheater, whose actions caused incredible pain to his wives and children. His daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, has spoken openly about their complicated and often difficult relationship, acknowledging both his charm and his failures as a father. His life is a powerful reminder that the people we idolize on screen are not the characters they play. They are complex human beings shaped by their own histories, struggles, and demons. To write him off as just a bad guy is too simple, just as it's wrong to only remember the charming hero. His legacy is messy, complicated, and a cautionary tale. It's the story of a man who got the American dream, but could never quite escape the nightmare of his past. He flew as close to the sun as anyone, and the glamour of his life on screen will always be tangled up with the chaos of his life off it. He wasn't the monster the rumor made him out to be. He was a man, in all his brilliant, frustrating, and tragic complexity. The story that brought you here, the sensational headline about a dark 60-year-old secret, turned out to be nothing more than an internet rumor. A fiction masquerading as fact. But in chasing down that ghost, we found a much more interesting, more human story. It's a story about the real battles fought by women like Kim Novak, who showed incredible courage, not in some made-up interview, but in her real-life defiance of a corrupt and powerful system. And it's the story of Tony Curtis, a man whose incredible success could never quite heal the wounds of his childhood, a man whose public triumphs were matched by his private struggles. Ultimately, it's a story about us, the audience, and our responsibility to look for the truth and question the easy, sensational narratives we see online. The real history of Hollywood isn't a simple story of heroes and villains. It's a complex tapestry of ambition, genius, trauma, and exploitation. The real secrets are always more complicated and more interesting than any rumor. And it's in that gray area between the legend and the reality where the truest stories are always found. If you want to explore more hidden truths from Hollywood's golden age, click on one of the videos on your screen now. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories you thought you knew.